This is a weekly word about Memorial Day, which comes up this next Monday. I'm going to have this weekly word as a tribute to a World War II hero, Jim Horse Smith. And he is a hero, but has also been a friend of mine. So I will be telling you his story. Memorial Day is set apart annually to honor those in the armed forces of the United States who sacrificed so much for our freedom. That was true with Jim Horse Smith. I use this weekly word to honor a Marine veteran and friend of mine who served in the battles of the islands of Tulagi and Guadalcanal in August and September 1942. Jim Horse Smith received 2 Silver Stars, one for his heroic combat action on Tulagi and another for his heroic combat action on Guadalcanal. First, I asked Jim in our friendship starting in 1953 how he got the nickname Horse. Jim chuckled and said that at boot camp, he was not liked by his drill sergeant. Jim said that he fashioned a yoke and rope to pull a sled of communications equipment across the sand. The sergeant, on seeing this, called Jim Horse Collar and then said, "You are a zero." Jim said he then shortened the nickname to Horse, and that's what I called him, Horse Smith. Early on in his Marine service, Jim was attached to a special Marine seaborne commando military unit and volunteered to join it. It was commanded by Colonel Merritt Edson and got the name Edson Raiders. They served the Marines in an outstanding manner and in 1942 and 1943 fought 7 critical battles in the islands of Tulagi, Guadalcanal, and New Georgia against some of Japan's most experienced jungle fighters. Before I tell you the story of Horse Smith, listen to what happened when I met a Fairfax County policeman this month. My Kia SUV was stolen on Friday, May the 13th. Yes, that's right, Friday the 13th. And the police recovered it on Tuesday, 16 May. The policeman called and asked me to come to the impound lot for an interview, and then he would release the SUV to me. I wore my U.S. Navy cap. After the interview, he thanked me for my service and then said, "My military hero is Jim Horse Smith, who served in the Marines in World War II. I was floored on hearing him say this and told him that Horse was my friend since 1953. We were both floored. I said we worked together in the government and after retiring had a weekly lunch together. He said he lived next door to the Smiths in Fairfax City, and Mr. Smith told him war stories. So here comes my version of the war stories. Sergeant Jim Smith, radioman and sharpshooter, received 2 Silver Stars for his service on the battles of Tulagi and Guadalcanal as an ensign raider. On Tulagi on 7 August 1942, Jim, aged 22, with his patrol was subjected to intense Japanese machine gun and rifle fire. Under fire, his patrol returned to the command post except for Jim. Sergeant Smith, disregarding his own personal safety, worked his way alone with great difficulty around the Japanese flank, trying to see where they were. From this position, Jim charged the Japanese unit, forcing them to return to a cave, thus neutralizing hostile fire. He radioed the command post and had the patrolmen bring an improvised TNT charge. This charge was thrown into the cave and killed the Japanese forces except for 3 who were taken prisoner. Tulagi was totally now in the hands of the Marines. Quite a feat by Jim Smith. As a result of the meritorious actions of Sergeant James Horse Smith, he was awarded a Silver Star. Then he went into battle on Guadalcanal, which was 20 miles away. Sergeant Smith was part of Edson Raiders as they worked their way to a ridge, which at first was called Bloody Ridge, and then renamed Edson's Ridge. Edson Raiders took the ridge to defend the captured airfield named Henderson Field. As Horse told the young Marines at Quantico from time to time, all hell broke loose as the Marines started down the Japanese side of the ridge along a fire trail the Japanese had cut in the jungle. They came under intense fire, and the officer in charge said they would get out of the ridge on the count of 3 and head back to the command post. Jim said he jumped up, left his unit, and started down the trail when the Japanese machine gun fire opened up. He said every time that he moved, the Japanese fired a few rounds. Jim set out a few grenades that he wore on a vest in front of him, and he checked his rifle. As the other men headed down to Henderson Field, Jim set off the grenades one by one and shot at the Japanese. They retreated, and he radioed the lieutenant, and the unit returned and once again secured the ridge and protected Henderson Field. As Horse waited for the Marines unit to return, however, the Japanese threw a grenade at him and it landed between his legs. He immediately closed his legs, dropped to the ground, rolled away, putting his arm against his head to prevent the shrapnel from hitting his head. The grenade exploded, causing wounds from the arm to the ankle, but his arm was most affected by the blast. He reasoned that it was a concussion grenade tossed to traumatize him. He was not traumatized. When his unit returned he walked into a small pond and he said it turned bloody red. He then was seen by a doctor who treated him and said he would be okay. And Jim said, I sure was. Jim survived and was evacuated to New Zealand, where he was situated for the rest of World War II. While in New Zealand, a Silver Star was pinned on Jim by Admiral Bull Halsey. After the war and for years on end, when he was in the Washington, D.C. area, he spoke to the young Marines at Quantico. The last time was when he was age 97. Jim finished his talk that day with an inspiring thought for those young Marines. You will have many opportunities in life to do some good, so study and learn whatever you can, ask questions, be helpful, be useful, and live a way of life where you can make a real difference. That thought by Jim Horst Smith is useful for us today as Christians. Finally, in 2020, at Jim Smith's age of 100, he learned that the Marine Corps Association commissioned a small statue of Jim to be created, which would be awarded annually to an outstanding Marine Raider by order of the Commandant. Yes, Jim was a World War II hero, and I was honored to work with him and also be his friend. God bless you and have a good week.